Greetings, I'm Mike Schwab, and I'm excited about telling you guys about this awesome place, Mooncopee National Monument. You're like, Mooncopee? Well, it was originally called Mooncopee, but that was the Native American term for this area, which means straight canyon. But you're more familiar with the name it has now, which is Zion National Park. Everybody pretty much knows Zion. It's one of the most popular national parks in the U.S. Zion is a Hebrew word meaning sanctuary, which is appropriately named because this does seem magical and spiritual. So, yeah, I like that. But it became a national park in the year 1919, and I'm excited about showing you this place. Beautiful cliffs, amazing. Geology is fascinating. The history of how these cliffs came to be is awesome. So I'm excited about telling you about that. One beautiful place after another. The cliffs, the valley, the narrows, the beautiful area where the water has really eroded. Yeah, I'm excited about telling you how this formed. Erosion was a big part of it, that's for sure. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in to Zion National Park. Let's do this. I'm here at Zion Lodge. This place is awesome. As you can see, the valley floor is nice and flat, and then the cliffs rise dramatically on both sides. And the question is, why is the valley so flat? Well, it turns out this used to be a lake. They get landslides here every now and then, often having to do with like heating and cooling of the rock, which leads to expansion and contraction. Can get some cracks in the rock, and other reasons why. There was a big landslide that actually dammed the Virgin River, and that created a lake in this whole valley. And so there was sedimentation at the bottom of the lake and created a nice flat lake bed. And so eventually the river was able to get through the dam, and there went the lake, and what was left? A nice flat surface. And it makes things even more dramatic, more awesome. Turns out, in 1995, speaking of landslides, there was a landslide that actually trapped like 450 people in a certain area of the park, and it took a while. They were there for a while until they could create another, basically carve out an escape route for them. So keep that in mind. Watch out for landslides, even though they can be dangerous, but they can also make some really awesome things like this cool flat valley. How the heck does soft sand become hardened sandstone? I'm glad you asked. Well, think about a sediment layer on top of the sand. That creates a lot of weight and pressure on that sand, right? So that's a big part of it. Also, mineral-rich waters will get in the sand. I think silica and calcium carbonate can precipitate out and form a cementing agent. So that makes it even harder. The combination of the weight and pressure from above and the cementing agent can turn something as soft as sand into super hard sandstone. Pretty cool. So you might be asking, how are there trees growing in the sandstone? Well, it turns out sandstone is a water-rich rock, can absorb water pretty well. So if you get a seedling down in there, you can't have a tree grow. And so what happens? Roots grow out of the base there, goes through the sandstone, and it can start breaking some of the sandstone up and it falls off or erosion happens. And also when water is like moving through the sandstone, if it gets to a harder layer, it cannot permeate, then spring can come out of the sandstone there, and then you can have vegetation at that spot. So you actually can have these really awesome hanging gardens right there. So it's pretty cool. That sandstone is such a water-friendly rock. One of the fun things to do around here is to look at these really cool rock formations and use your imagination to think about what they look like. I'm calling this the Jabba the Hutt rock right there. You can see that it looks like these layers of blob type looking thing. Yeah, so pretty sweet. Jabba the Hutt rock. I'm gonna say this is one of the guys from the Planet of the Apes. You seen it? I've also heard possibly Lion King. All right, I'm getting ready to hike the Angel's Landing hike. It's a really famous hike. It's supposed to be really beautiful. It's also supposed to be pretty dangerous. One of the most dangerous hikes in the world, actually. So, hopefully I make it back. Also, I'll be on the lookout for some angels. Hopefully I'll see them up there. All right. All right, I made it to the top of Angel's Landing. That was definitely an awesome hike. Highly recommend it. It's about 1,500 feet elevation gain. I think it's like 2.7 miles or so. But toward the end, it gets steep. It's like the longest 0.5 miles I ever experienced. You're walking along a really narrow area with a steep on both sides. You got to use a chain. It's like a one-way trip, so there's a lot of working with people. Like, hey, you can go at this point, or waiting for people. But it's definitely worth it. It is awesome. The view up here is money. Haven't seen any angels up here. I'll be on the lookout, but definitely godlike. It's pretty incredible thinking about the people that built that trail. It was a really unique trail, a lot of switchbacks. Went through something called Walter's Wiggles. That's a ton of switchbacks. Check this place out. This is magical. Cliffs, river, amazing. The climate in Zion is definitely interesting. It varies greatly, largely depending on what your elevation is at. Looking at this chart here, this is the weather for the base of the canyon, which is around 1,219 meters above sea level, or 4,000 feet. But much of the park is actually at higher elevations, 7,000 feet. So, on average, you're going to have temperatures like 5 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit cooler higher up. Now, generally speaking for this area, lower elevations, the climate is mostly dry, a lot of sun, pretty mild winters, and hot summers. Look at that, July average high, 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a typical day. So, you'll see record high 115. So it definitely gets toasty around there in the summer. Not the ideal time to go. But another thing that's interesting to note about the temperatures around there is it also depends on like how deep into a canyon you are. If you go up near into the Narrows, these areas don't get any direct sunlight. It's quite a bit cooler, and in fact, the vegetation changes greatly to the point where it almost seems like you're in the Pacific Northwest. Pretty cool, huh? As you can see here, it does snow in Zion sometimes, even throughout the spring. And it typically stays above the canyon floor, but sometimes the snow does come all the way down. And that'd be sweet to see, right? I'd love to see the full park in a winter wonderland sometime, so I'll have to check that out. Now, the last important thing to mention about Zion's weather is that although this region is generally dry, it's totally different during the monsoon season, which is when there's a humidity in the air and there are frequent thunderstorms. I mean, look at this chart. You can see this lasts from about July through into September. There's typically 29 days of thunderstorms in July and August. Like, what is this monsoon I speak of? Well, monsoon means a seasonal change in wind pattern, and it's mostly famous around India. There's a huge monsoon around there, but there's also a North American monsoon that is significant. How does this work? Well, mostly has to do with air over land warming up a lot more than air over nearby water. Water temperatures don't change that much in an ocean, and so it affects the air above it. So it'll keep the air cooler than hot air over land. The monsoon is similar to how a sea breeze works, actually. So when you have those heat that develops over land compared to over the water, the heat over land causes warm air to rise, and a thermal low-pressure system develops at the surface in the desert southwest. And air at the surface is trying to fill that in, so it'll start moving from areas south of the desert southwest out toward the eastern Pacific, west of Mexico out there, and start moving in to this area of low pressure, bringing up humid air. So you get a lot of thunderstorms toward the end of summer in the desert southwest, and you can imagine with all the rock, canyons, and rivers in this region, you get flash floods. All of a sudden you get a real intense flow of the rivers through these canyons, and that ain't no joke. You do not want to be hiking in Zion Canyon if there's a chance for a flash flood. That's a big deal. They've had a lot of problems with that. People having to form human chains to get out of the floods and whatnot. That is something to keep in mind. But one thing that should be noted is that flash floods have played a major role in shaping the landscape in Zion. And the landscape is ever changing because of the great force of flowing water. There you go. Weather in Zion. Pretty dang cool, huh? Word of the wise. If there's any chance of a thunderstorm in the Zion area, you should probably stay away. You might not even have rain falling on you, just very close or upstream. You might be walking along dry bed like this. You're like, oh, it's cool. I got nothing to worry about. And then there's, maybe there's a thunderstorm upstream, and that stuff can come rushing down, take over really quickly, and that's probably not what you're going for. All right, I made it to the end of Zion Canyon, to an incredible place called the Temple of Sinawava. It sounds cool, right? And I'm glad they named it like that, because it is a special place. It's really awesome. Sinawava is a Native American word, I believe a Paiute word for the coyote god. It sounds like he was like a trickster guy who can cause some problems, but he's also really helpful and he's a good teacher. But this place is magical. It's not just cool looking, it feels awesome. There's some sort of special energy, I would say, and it feels like a place where you come to really like honor the creator, if you believe, or something. That it just feels like there's something behind this place. So what exactly is going on in these beautiful cliffs? Well, 270 million years of formation to create this awesomeness. These different beautiful layers, these are indicative of the types of environment that existed over the millennia. This area was actually pretty near the equator hundreds of millions of years ago. And that was one of the reasons why sometimes it had a tropical environment. Well, sometimes it was arid, totally desert-like. Sometimes there was an inland sea in here. Sometimes it was very marshy and just meandering rivers. Also, we got to think about sedimentation layers. That's one of the coolest things about this area, is that you can really see the sedimentation layers. Sedimentation layers, sedimentary rock. Think about a body of water, a lake. There's going to be some settling. Particulate matter, the things that have died and whatnot are going to start accumulating some lake bed of all that material, right? Once the water goes away, now you have this layer of accumulated stuff, and it can harden into rock of whatever was in that lake at that time. It's not always from bodies of water, but oftentimes it was. We have the Carmel Formation. This was laid down about 170 million years ago. This was mostly limestone and mudstone with some sandstone, siltstone. There were some marine organisms here, these bryozoans. Dinosaur footprints have been found in there. Imagine a big dinosaur stepping in the mud. And then it starts to harden. And then if you have some layer of sediment above that hardened footprint, it can protect that layer for millions of years. And then if that layer above the footprint gets eroded away, and boom, now you got a dinosaur footprint, and somebody's walking along and be like, whoa, check that out, a footprint from 100 million years ago, that's crazy. This layer was laid down because it was the edge of the Sundance Sea. So what was the Sundance Sea? It was a body of water that made the sun dance? I'd like to think so, but not quite. Basically, as sea levels rose and fell, some water from the Arctic Ocean would come south. So around 150, 200 million years ago, in the Jurassic period, the Sundance Sea was a branch of the Arctic Ocean that came south, in western U.S., western Canada, all the way down toward the Colorado Plateau. All right, so Navajo Sandstone, yeah, this is beautiful rock. These are huge sand dunes that harden. They're white to light pink colored, and the differences in colors are due to the differences in groundwater. So these dunes were underground; they were buried. And sometimes you get some red in the sand dune, that sandstone. That's because there's some iron oxide mixed in there, just like the Mars, red planet. If you have iron, you can get rust. Next, below the Navajo Sandstone is the Cayenneta Formation. This was laid down around 200 million years ago, and this is a thinner, dark, broken layer with ledges, sandstone, shale, and limestone. So yeah, what exactly is limestone? You know the song, like a limestone cow. Wait, nope, like a rhinestone cowboy, never mind. No, but seriously, what is limestone? Limestone is some cool rock. It comes from marine environments. So seawater has a little bit of calcium carbonate in it, and marine organisms will use that, such as clams, oysters, mussels, and coral will use that calcium carbonate in the water to create their shells and bones. Pretty interesting. And so when they die, that stuff settles at the bottom of the seawater, and the water creates a lot of pressure, and it just starts accumulating at the bottom. And once the water goes away, you have a thick layer of calcium carbonate that's settled, and it hardens the rock, and there you go, sedimentary rock that is made of calcium carbonate. Something that's interesting is you can test rock to see if it's limestone by putting some hydrochloric acid on it, or vinegar, and it will start to bubble if it's limestone because some carbon dioxide gas is formed. So yeah, that'd be cool to go out sometime with some hydrochloric acid or vinegar and do the test and be like, oh yeah, bubbled, there it is, limestone, baby. Then below the Cayenneta we have the Monavie. This was a little over 200 million years ago. This is siltstone and sandstone. It was formed on Cayenneta Formation, and there's an unconformity of about 10 million years. An unconformity is when there's some missing rock. Like at some point there was a sedimentary rock that is no longer there, not really sure why it's gone. Now, then you have the Chinle below that. This was 200 some million years ago, from sediment from rivers and streams, lakes, wetlands, and windblown debris. And then finally at the very bottom, the Mooncopee. This was laid down around 240 million years ago, sandstone, mudstone, and shale with some limestone. And then, so this is all underground, you know, basically 10,000 feet of layers, and this whole thing was uplifted due to some plates and other forces under the ground, forcing this whole Colorado Plateau up and exposing all these layers that formed over millions of years. This right here is the beautiful Virgin River. This is what's carved out Zion Canyon. This is the very end where the Narrows begins. Apparently it's really cut out the canyon sharply. It's created real thin canyon, just getting deeper and deeper. And that's been the power of this water. You know, think about erosion, what it can do over millions of years. Flash floods coming through here and just working its magic. And after a long period of time, what do you have? It's a canyon that's incredible and just gets more and more deep and awesome. If you were to use your imagination to make up a special, you know, magical, fake, make-believe type world, this might be the kind of place that you'd come up with. It's everywhere you go, it feels special, feels incredible. So, highly recommend Zion National Park. It's been a great time. Check it out. And it's awesome, Zion even has an outdoor comedy club. Look at this. She said we should go to Zion. I said, no, we should go to Zioff.